Hey everyone, welcome to Taste Different Gaming Appetizers. And what are we talking about this time? Hell is frozen over. Cats and dogs getting together. Mass hysteria. Square Enix has actually managed to exceed their sales expectations on a game. Holy crap. What year is it? 2025? Are we sure? All right, before we get started, make sure you like the video. Subscribe if you're not already. Help us out. Be like Square. So Square Enix has been failing several times to meet their sales targets. Last year, they saw Final Fantasy VII Rebirth and Final Fantasy XVI falling short of whatever numbers the publisher cooked up, which seems to far exceed any number that we all know, and clearly them as well. And as well as before that, Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxies undershot expectations, and Marvel's Avengers was disappointing. So Square Enix has had a lot of disappointing, or according to them, a lot of disappointing, not meeting our sales figure games, right? They don't tell us what those figures are, but they never seem to exceed them or even get close. But there's a report of an anomaly. A game has made it through. So one of Square Enix's games not only satisfies its sales targets, but it actually managed to bring out an incredibly rare, stronger sales than initially assumed from the publisher's latest financial report. And it's not a Final Fantasy game. It's still one of the major, the publisher's major money makers. And this time it's Dragon Quest III HD 2D Remake, which, while Square Enix doesn't say how many units sold across all its platforms, are just how much better it sold than expected. It does specifically mention that it is a reason behind sub-segment operating income increasing along with lower development cost, a moralization, and advertising expenses compared to the same period of the previous year. Bunch of corporate jargon. But basically saying, hey, it sold more than we expected. And so that raised our operating income a bit because of we forecasted it to sell this much and it sold beyond that. So that's great. I mean, Square Enix acknowledges the game has sold better than expected, but despite the Square Enix 3 remake getting its very brief single sentence flowers, that hasn't stopped Square Enix from reporting an overall downturn in game sales and profits. So even though Dragon Quest did great for them, they still came out in the red, right? Overall profits were reported around 1.6 billion, down by 7.7%, while net sales were around 1.05 billion, down 10.7% year on year. It's a continuing trend for Square Enix, which has already reported failing profits in May last year. It'll be interesting to see if there's any significant uptick in this year or two, with current CEO Takashi Kuri entering his third year as head of the company, along with his restructuring efforts. So we'll see. And I think this proves that, like, I don't know, for me, before we go over to Pat, like I love Dragon Quest. I played Dragon Quest 3 HD 2D Remake. It was, I think, in the our ITD Game of the Years, it was in my top game for last year. I think it was in my top 4 or whatever that we had games. And I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a great game. It was a lot of fun. They did a really good job. They added stuff to it. It looked really good. It played really nice. And it was old school, right? I mean, it was turn-based combat, old school style, but they did a really good job with it. And so I think there's still a market for that. And I think it was more of a, it wasn't plagued with microtransactions or DLC or anything like that. It was just the straightforward game. They added some like additional stuff, like an extra dungeon, some extra like items and things like that in the game, but didn't do any sort of live service elements or anything. They kind of just stuck to the original premise, but bringing it up to modern standards as far as graphically and dialogue and things like that, right? So ultimately, they just gave it the modern age spit shine, and but I mean, it was a remake, not a remaster. So they recreated it from the ground up, but just, they didn't try to add a bunch of crap into it. And I think that might be what really helped that type of game, right? I think with 16 and even 7 Remake or 7 Rebirth, I liked all those games, but I feel like they tried to pack too much into it, right? Or do too much with it, or change it so much and try to appeal to a broader base. Where I feel like Dragon Quest III HD 2D didn't really try to appeal itself to a broader base, but it brought in a broader base, right? And it was mainly I felt like it was mainly kind of made for the fans, but the fans enjoyed it so much that the people that typically wouldn't play it were like, hey, I'll check it out. And then they liked it, right? It was kind of more of like a word of mouth type of thing where people were like, this game is really good. And so other people were like, okay, cool, I'll check it out. And then other people started to like it that may have commonly not have played it or, even had purposely going to check it out in the first place, right? So, that kind of stuff happens, right? And so it feels like to me that Square Enix needs to maybe focus on more stuff like that in some regard. Not trying to, not even Square Enix, a lot of these companies out here, right? I mean, we talked about EA and their live service, stuff like that. And it's like, you're missing the point, right? I mean, a lot of, especially for us, like a lot of games, there have been some big games that we played, but a lot of games that we play are, especially for me, are like our smaller games just because not all the time, but a lot of the time, because it seems like the passion and the focus is more narrow and straightforward instead of like the Assassin's Creed style of trying to pack so much into something, which loses a lot of people. So I don't know. What do you think, Pat? What do you think about that?
Square Enix actually put out good news. I mean, there's no, they're making over $1 billion, right? Still, so there's no worry that Square Enix is going anywhere anytime soon. But it just, when they keep talking about slipping figures, it just means that they're going to have to rein in their spending, which means we're going to get less and less stuff that we want. It always worries me when companies see unexpected revenue in places that I'm not a huge fan of. And what I mean by not a huge fan of is I don't mind when they remake something, but sometimes game companies take that too far. And I feel like we just got out of the whole remake remaster slump and everybody's starting to pump out new stuff. But, Square Enix is probably going to see this and go, which they've still been in that, right? Because they're doing the whole Final Fantasy 7 remake stuff, the remake, rebirth, all that stuff. And while I am cool with that for the most part, and those are super old games, so go on with it. Square Enix doesn't feel like they're doing anything new. I mean, they have done some new stuff. It's not gone great for them. They published, I should say, some stuff like that. So, I think Square Enix is in that fear phase right now where they're like, I don't really want to do anything that I'm not sure of. And so, but they also have unrealistic expectations, right? Rebirth, bad, didn't do great. Sold a shit ton, but not good enough at our expectations, right? We had this number that we just pulled out of our ass and said, yay. And it didn't make it. So we called it a failed game, or it wasn't a banger we needed it to be, right? So, I mean, and I hate that, but that's the corporate world, right? Everything is forecasted. I'm going to say we're going to sell this number of units for this game by this date, the first day, first week, first month, first quarter, first half of the year, and then, year total. And when something fails to meet those numbers that somebody arbitrarily came up with, because I'm sorry, there's no time machine to tell you how many it's going to sell. You're just hoping and praying and saying, well, we sold this many from the previous one, or we've seen previous games of this type sell X. That's what Sony did. Sony's like, hey, we saw Fortnite sell this. Concord should be able to sell at least this number. And then when Concord didn't, 11 days later, they're like, we're pulling the plug, right? Unrealistic expectations and putting your game on a pedestal that you put it there rather than people who played it put it there. So
Also, what I think helped Dragon Quest 3 HD2D remake is it came out on everything.
yes, yeah, oh yeah, for sure, right? Not stuck on one solution. So hopefully Sony has learned from that, because they have been, the stuff that they're complaining about was like PlayStation only. When they were talking about the Rebirth stuff, we didn't sell well. When your market is just PlayStation,
yeah, and so was 16, right? 16
right,
was PlayStation as well only.
right, and then it's like, okay, we'll roll out the rest of these a year or two down the road when the fervor has already cooled off from this game, where people have already forgot about it, that couldn't play it. Um, because as much as I like the Final Fantasy games, they're not console sellers in my opinion. Not in my opinion. Some people they may be, but I don't think they're console movers. They may move the needle just a hair for some people, but they're not like console sellers. So and that may be hard for Square Enix to hear, but it's the truth of the matter, right? I'm not going to go out and buy a console that I don't have just for one of their games. As much as I enjoyed their recent games, I like Final Fantasy remake, and Rebirth was just man to me. But like I said, I like Square Enix's games for the most part. I love turn-based games. I hate turn-based games with twitch skills. So when you bring something back old and then you don't add on these new abilities, like to get a perfect dodge in a turn-based game, hit this button at the right time. I'm like, hell no. I want to strategize my turn and let my turn play out, and then the enemies go and watch theirs, and then strategize my next move, and so on and so forth. I don't want to be sitting there going, okay, I gotta be ready. Hit that perfect attack button so I can attack. Hit that X button or that triangle button or that square button, So people want some of that old school nostalgia back, and that's what this game does. It's just polished and remade, right? New stuff added. So it was a remake and not a remaster, which is good. So yeah, I mean, hell has frozen over because Square Enix is admitting something was good. The sky's not falling on Square Enix all the time. So even though they're making money, they just weren't making as much as they were hoping. And yeah, they're in a retraction period, it seems like. But I'll be honest, they kind of backed, and when I mean backed, they published a few games that weren't theirs, that were just hot garbage. You win some, you lose some with publishing, right? You just got to take, and when you're publishing a game, you're taking somebody's vision, right? And saying, okay, I believe that vision can sell, so I'm going to invest I'm going to give you the money you need to start this game up. And then, I'll recoup first dollar till I get mine back. And then whatever our markup percentages are, and then you'll start getting yours, and then we'll keep getting our royalty or whatever the contract is. So, I'm not worried about Square Enix going anywhere. I'm just worried about the number of games and new IPs, or even like continuation of not so strong IPs is going to go in the future, right?
Yeah. Because they also had Foam Stars too,
Yeah.
which was also a PlayStation exclusive, which also didn't do well for them.
Right.
So,
right, and then because we still get one more Final Fantasy, at least one more Final Fantasy 7 game, right? I know I've heard rumors that they were trying to split that out into like even more games, the final one, and I'm just like, okay, but at the same time, milk it for all it's worth. But at the same time, they're probably a little gun shy now. Well, the last one didn't do so well, so are we really going to continue to do this one? So I don't know.
I think they should do the third one and just finish it there.
Yeah,
right? Don't split it into two other games or anything like that.
Yep. Yeah, and like I said, it's just sometimes it's hit or miss, right? With games and what you put out, you may think that your vision is just the bee's knees, the best thing since sliced bread, but then playtesters are like, it's okay. You're going to have your fervent fan base. You're going to have your fanboys. You're going to have fangirls. You're going to have your fans. And then you're going to have your newcomers, and it just depends, right? The market is fickle for gaming.
It is.
We enter the market of, where some publishers and developers are talking about putting out $100 games and $80 games, and games just become further and further outside the reach of majority of people, and eventually reach that tipping point to where games are outweighing their affordability for everybody, and so you reach that tipping point where you can't make money,
right?
So
and the cost of a game, like we've said before, the cost of anything, right, doesn't mean that it's going to be good, right? We've seen that with movies and games and all sorts of entertainment media that have spent a ton of money to do something and it ended up being a disaster. So
what was that Microsoft one, the Arcane, or the one that Arcane,
Redfall,
yeah,
yeah. And then there was that movie that Disney, I think it was Disney, that spent a bunch of money on and advertised for, and it bombed when it came out. You know, and Square Enix has done that, and a lot of developers have done that too, right? And
you're gonna have ups and downs.
Yeah, I'm sure for Square, I'm sure Dragon Quest 3 was probably on lower of their expected sales figures, if I were to guess. I'm glad it exceeded that. Like I said, I mean, they're already making Dragon Quest 12. They announced that like a couple years back, but you know, I'm a big Dragon Quest fan, so maybe I mean, Dragon Quest is big in Japan, right? It's not as big here as it is there, but hopefully that'll make Square want to bring more Dragon Quest here, right? Because there's still a lot of titles of Dragon Quest that are only in Japan still that never came here. So,
well, they think the Westerners don't like Japanese style RPGs,
RPGs,
JRPGs, but JRPGs is a huge market over here. People are
yeah.
I know tons of people that are like, this JRPG, this JRPG, that. Nick is a huge JRPG fan. He's always like, you need to check this one out. You need to check that one out. You know, this one's super long, but sometimes you need those super long JRPGs when there's a lull in the market of games that you want to play. You're just like, I need something to sink my time into.
What is it? Trails of
Heroes? Of Heroes.
Well, it's Trails of Heroes, and then like that's a whole series of things.
Yeah.
But all those games are fantastic. Like great stories, great RPGs. The Wise series, or Yeez or Wise or however you say it. Those games are really great too. They're just really long freaking games, like really deep JRPGs that if you want to get lost in one of those, you're going to have a great time playing it, but it's like, it's going to consume your time. Right. And I've beaten a few of them and they are great, but they do consume your time. So yeah, I mean, there's still a market for that. And there's some really great games out there that are in that way. Everything doesn't need to be like action based and flashy and stuff like that.
There's different genres of gamers out there. Some gamers like this, some gamers like that, but
yeah. And I like a mixture, right? There's sometimes I like to play a flashy action game, and there's sometimes I want to play something more tactical or methodical or whatever, you know, that where I have to think about my actions and moves and my play set and things like that. And it's kind of a slower paced combat system.
Yep.
Right. I don't want to have to go into every game, be it an RPG or not, and just do nothing but button mash. Right. That's just no fun.
Nope.
Not unless you're expecting it, right?
Right. Unless you're playing unless you're playing those type of games, you know,
right.
Just the smash and grab and the freaking button mashers, you know.
Yeah. If you know that's the type of game it is, then cool. You go into it, you're like, all right, yeah, I know what this is. And sometimes it's fun to play something like that, right? Just waste your time. And it's like one of those games you turn your brain off and you just mash buttons and play through it.
Yep. Sometimes that's why I like turn-based games too. So I could just like, you know, I could play something, but at the same time, I'm not like stressful playing something. I'm just like, okay, I can make my turn at my leisure, right? That's why I like turn-based games. That's why I hate that they started adding Twitch mechanics to turn-based games, because I'm just like, I want to read what's going on and I want to like see what counters this or that and just play around with strategies. And then it's like, the new strategy is you got to be ready to push that button at a moment's notice. And I'm like, I don't want to do that.
Right. Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, good for Square, I guess. So I don't know. Let us know down in the comments below. Did you play Dragon Quest 3 HD 2D remake? I did. I beat it. I did everything in it. It was great. I loved it. Can't wait for more. But let us know down in the comments below. Other than that, thanks for watching, everybody. Make sure you like the video. Make sure you subscribe if you're not already. Help us out. Do us a favor. Hit that subscribe button. Hit the bell notifications to stay up to date with new videos that we do all the time. We'll see you next time.